Bienvenidos! In today's video, we're going to be translating English sentences into Spanish. We'll begin with I wake up early. In Spanish, we use a reflexive verb. Me for I, me. Despierto for wake up, despierto. Temprano for early, temprano. Me despierto temprano. How do we say I get up late in Spanish? It's very similar to the previous one. We'll start with me as it's a reflexive verb. Get up is levanto. Me levanto. And what does late mean? Tarde. Me levanto tarde. Me levanto tarde. How would you say I don't get up late? I is yo. Don't. How do you say don't? No. Get up. Me levanto. And how do you say late? Tarde. Yo no me levanto tarde. In Spanish, it's not necessary to add the pronouns as in English. So you can start the sentence as no me levanto tarde. You could think of me as being I. No me levanto tarde. How would you say I need to sleep? I is yo and need, necesito. To sleep is an infinitive verb. So in Spanish, it's just going to be one word, dormir. The infinitive verbs in Spanish end in AOR, EOR, or IOR. Yo necesito dormir. Yo necesito dormir. And how do you say I go to the bathroom? I is yo. How do you say go? Voy. To the is al. And bathroom is baño. Yo voy al baño. So here, al is actually a contraction for a él. To the would be a él. But in Spanish, since we're using two vowels, a, él, the A and the E, everything gets combined into one word. Al. Yo voy al baño. Yo voy al baño. How about I brush my teeth? Me, brush, cepillo. So here we're seeing another reflexive verb. A lot of the things that we do for ourselves in Spanish will start with me. Me cepillo. Mis, how do you say teeth? Dientes. Mis dientes. Me cepillo mis dientes. Me cepillo mis dientes. How would you say I don't eat breakfast? I is yo. Don't, how do you say don't? No. Eat breakfast is actually just one word in Spanish. Desayuno. Desayunar is treated as a verb, so we don't have to add eat before it. It is possible. Yo no como el desayuno if we want to treat it as a noun. But we usually just say desayuno as a verb. Yo no desayuno. Yo no desayuno. How about I like to drink coffee? I like is me gusta. Me gusta. To drink is an infinitive, so we're going to use tomar, the infinitive form. And how do you say coffee? Café. Me gusta tomar café. Me gusta tomar café. How would you say I work from home? I is yo. Work is trabajo. From, desde casa. Yo trabajo desde casa. Yo trabajo desde casa. And I work at the office. We already saw how to say I work. Yo trabajo at, en, va, la, because office is feminine singular. Oficina. Yo trabajo en la oficina. Yo trabajo en la oficina. How would you say I like to cook dinner? We already saw how to say I like. Do you remember? Me gusta. To cook is an infinitive verb. So we're going to use cocinar. Dinner, la cena. Me gusta cocinar la cena. Me gusta cocinar la cena. I am learning Spanish. Yo, estoy aprendiendo. Spanish, español. Yo estoy aprendiendo español. Yo estoy aprendiendo español. The next one is I have 2 kids. I is yo. Have, tengo. How do you say 2? Dos hijos. Yo tengo 2 hijos. Yo tengo 2 hijos. How would you say I have a pet? We already saw how to say I have. Yo tengo. Una. Pet is mascota. Yo tengo una mascota. Yo tengo una mascota. How about I don't have pets? I is yo. And remember how to say don't? No, very easy. Yo no. And do you remember how to say have? Tengo. Yo no tengo. Pets. How would you say pets? Mascotas. We just turn it into plural with the S at the end. Yo no tengo mascotas. Yo no tengo mascotas. How would you say I love my family? I is yo, love, amo, and my. So in this instance, we do have to add a mí. Yo amo a mi familia. Yo amo a mi familia. Yo amo a mi familia. She is beautiful. How do you say she? Ella. Is. How do you say is? Es. And beautiful? Hermosa. Ella es hermosa. Ella es hermosa. How about it is cold outside? It is actually one word in Spanish. Hace. Hace. And how do you say cold? Frío. And outside? Afuera. Hace frío afuera. Hace frío afuera. How would you translate you are tired? How do you say you? Tú. Tú is for the informal you. How do you say are? Estás and tired. Cansado or cansada. It depends on the gender of the person. Tú estás cansado for a male. Tú estás cansada for a female. Tú estás cansado. Tú estás cansada. And how would you ask this question? Who is she? How do you say who? ¿Quién? Is. Es. And how do you say she? We already practiced with that one. Ella. ¿Quién es ella? ¿Quién es ella? The food was delicious. How do you say the? In this case, it's la. And food, comida. Comida is a feminine singular noun. That's why we use la. Was, estuvo, delicious. Deliciosa. La comida estuvo deliciosa. La comida estuvo deliciosa. How would you say we are very happy? How do you say we? It could be nosotros or nosotras, depending on the gender. How do you say are? Estamos and very, muy, and how would you say happy? Felices. Nosotros estamos muy felices. Nosotras estamos muy felices. In Spanish, we have to conjugate the verbs to the person, but we also have to make sure the adjectives match the gender and plurality of the nouns. So happy could be feliz for singular or felices for plural. The gender doesn't play a role on this one. How do we translate my keys are lost? How do you say my? Mis. In this case, keys is a plural noun, so we're going to use mis. And how do you say keys? Llaves. And are. Están. Lost is perdidas. Mis llaves están perdidas. Mis llaves están perdidas. How about this one? They were playing outside. How do you say they? It could be ellos or ellas, depending on the gender. Were. Estaban. And how about playing? Jugando. Outside. We already saw that one. Do you remember? Afuera. Ellos estaban jugando afuera. Ellas estaban jugando afuera. How would you translate that is not funny? How do you say that? Eso. In Spanish, negative sentences have the word no first. No, and the verb comes after. Es. How do you say funny? Chistoso. Eso no es chistoso. Eso no es chistoso. Let's keep practicing with this structure. Your house is not near. How do you say your? Tu. How do you say house? Casa. And here we swap is not. We're going to use no first. And then está. How do you say near? Cerca. Tu casa no está cerca. Tu casa no está cerca. How about you were not at home? How do you say you? Tú. And what comes next? No. How do you conjugate where in this instance? Estabas. At. En. And how do you say home? Casa. Tú no estabas en casa. Tú no estabas en casa. You're doing really good. How do we translate I was worried about you? How do we say I? Yo. And was. Estaba. Worried. Worried could be preocupada or preocupado based on the gender. And how would you translate about? Por. And you. Ti. Yo estaba preocupada por ti. Yo estaba preocupado por ti. I am at the hospital. I is yo, am, estoy, at, en. That in this case is el because hospital is considered a masculine singular noun. Hospital is hospital. Remember that in Spanish the H is always silent. Yo estoy en el hospital. Yo estoy en el hospital. Yo estoy en el hospital. And how do we talk about the future? I will be ready soon. I is yo, and will be is actually just one word in Spanish. Estaré. And how do you say ready? Lista or listo, based on the gender. And soon is pronto. Yo estaré lista pronto. Yo estaré listo pronto. And how would you ask this question? Where were you last night? How do you say where? ¿Dónde? And where? ¿Estabas? Tú, although it's not necessary in Spanish, Last night is actually just one word, anoche. ¿Dónde estabas tú anoche? ¿Dónde estabas tú anoche? How do you say I want in Spanish? Yo quiero. Yo quiero. How do you say it? Yo quiero. A hamburger. Una hamburguesa. Una hamburguesa. How do you say it? Una hamburguesa. With cheese. How do you say with cheese in Spanish? Con queso. Con queso. How do you say it? Con queso. Now let's put it all together. I want a hamburger with cheese. Yo quiero una hamburguesa con queso. Yo quiero una hamburguesa con queso. How do you say it? Yo quiero una hamburguesa con queso. Very good. All right, how do you say I want? Yo quiero. Yo quiero. To go. How do you say to go in Spanish? Ir. Ir. How do you say it? Ir. To the party. A la fiesta. A la fiesta. How do you say to the party? A la fiesta. With you. Contigo. Contigo. How do you say with you in Spanish? Contigo. Now let's put it together. I want to go to the party with you. Yo quiero ir a la fiesta contigo. Yo quiero ir a la fiesta contigo. How do you say it? Yo quiero ir a la fiesta contigo. All right, how do you say I would like in Spanish? Me gustaría. Me gustaría. How do you say it? Me gustaría. To go with you. How do you say to go with you in Spanish? Ir, to go. Contigo, with you. Ir contigo. How do you say it? Ir contigo. But, pero, pero. How do you say but in Spanish? Pero. I'm working. How do we say I'm working in Spanish? Estoy trabajando. Estoy trabajando. How do you say it? Estoy trabajando. So all together, I would like to go with you, but I'm working. Me gustaría ir contigo, pero estoy trabajando. Me gustaría ir contigo, pero estoy trabajando. How do you say it? Me gustaría ir contigo, pero estoy trabajando. Muy bien. Very good. My brother. Mi hermano. Mi hermano. How do you say it? Mi hermano. Wants to purchase. Quiere comprar. Quiere comprar. How do you say wants to purchase in Spanish? Quiere comprar. A house. Una casa. Una casa. How do you say a house in Spanish? Una casa. Next year. El próximo año. El próximo año. How do you say next year in Spanish? El próximo año. So if we put it together, my brother wants to purchase a house next year is mi hermano quiere comprar una casa el próximo año. Mi hermano quiere comprar una casa el próximo año. How do you say it? Mi hermano quiere comprar una casa el próximo año. How do you say yesterday in Spanish? Ayer. Ayer. How do you say it? Ayer. I went. Yo fui. Yo fui. You can actually leave yo out of the sentence and just say fui. Fui. So how do you say I went in Spanish? Yo fui. To the bank. How do you say to the bank? Al banco. Al banco. How do you say it? Al banco. So altogether, yesterday I went to the bank. Ayer yo fui al banco. Or ayer fui al banco. How do you say it? Ayer fui al banco. Excelente. How do you say tomorrow in Spanish? Mañana. Mañana. How do you say it? Mañana. I will go. How do you say I will go? Iré. Iré. How do you say I will go? Iré. To the park. Al parque. Al parque. How do you say to the park? Al parque. Near my house. Cerca de mi casa. Cerca de mi casa. How do you say near my house? Cerca de mi casa. Tomorrow I will go to the park near my house. Mañana iré al parque cerca de mi casa. Mañana iré al parque cerca de mi casa. How do you say it? Mañana iré al parque cerca de mi casa. All right, so how do you say you said in Spanish? Tú dijiste. Tú dijiste. How do you say it? Tú dijiste. That you would help me. Que me ayudarías. Que me ayudarías. How do you say it? Que me ayudarías. With my chores. Con mis tareas. Con mis tareas. How do you say it? Con mis tareas. So all together now, you said that you would help me with my chores is in Spanish, tú dijiste que me ayudarías con mis tareas. Tú dijiste que me ayudarías con mis tareas. How do you say it? Tú dijiste que me ayudarías con mis tareas. Excellent. How do you say I need in Spanish? Yo necesito. Yo necesito. How do you say it? Yo necesito. To talk. Hablar. Hablar. How do you say to talk? Hablar. To you. Contigo. Contigo. How do you say to you? Contigo. Now. How do you say now? Ahora. Ahora. How do you say it? Ahora. I need to talk to you now. Yo necesito hablar contigo ahora. Yo necesito hablar contigo ahora. How do you say it? Yo necesito hablar contigo ahora. He brought me. Él me trajo. Él me trajo. How do you say it? Él me trajo. How do you say red roses in Spanish? Rosas rojas. Rosas rojas. How do you say it? Rosas rojas. And a gift. Y un regalo. Y un regalo. How do you say and a gift in Spanish? Y un regalo. He brought me red roses and a gift. Él me trajo rosas rojas y un regalo. Él me trajo rosas rojas y un regalo. How do you say it? Él me trajo rosas rojas y un regalo. How about I don't want? Yo no quiero. Yo no quiero. How do you say it? Yo no quiero. To go. Ir. Ir. How do you say to go? Ir. To work. How do you say to work? A trabajar. A trabajar. How do you say it? A trabajar. Today. How do you say today? Hoy. Hoy. How do you say it? Hoy. So all together, I don't want to go to work today. Yo no quiero ir a trabajar hoy. Yo no quiero ir a trabajar hoy. How do you say it? Yo no quiero ir a trabajar hoy. How do we say I would like in Spanish? Me gustaría. Me gustaría. How do you say it? Me gustaría. Muy bien. To learn. Aprender. Aprender. How do you say to learn? Aprender. A new language. Un nuevo idioma. Un nuevo idioma. How do you say a new language? Un nuevo idioma. So how do we put it all together? I would like to learn a new language in Spanish. Me gustaría aprender un nuevo idioma. Me gustaría aprender un nuevo idioma. How do you say it? Me gustaría aprender un nuevo idioma. How do you say every day in Spanish? Todos los días. Todos los días. How was it? Todos los días. I wake up in Spanish. Me despierto. Me despierto. How do you say I wake up? Me despierto. At 6 a.m. A las 6 a.m. A las 6 a.m. How do you say it? A las 6 a.m. If we put it all together, every day I wake up at 6 a.m. in Spanish is todos los días me despierto a las 6 a.m. Todos los días me despierto a las 6 a.m. Your turn. Todos los días me despierto a las 6 a.m. Very good. How do you say last night in Spanish? Anoche. Anoche. How do you say it? Anoche. And how do we translate I lost in Spanish? Perdí. Perdí. So in Spanish, we don't have to use the pronouns because the verbs are conjugated to the person. Here we left off yo, but it could be yo perdí. Yo perdí. How do you say I lost in Spanish? Perdí. My keys. Mis llaves. Mis llaves. How do you say my keys in Spanish? Mis llaves. Putting it all together, last night I lost my keys. In Spanish is anoche perdí mis llaves. Anoche perdí mis llaves. Your turn. Anoche perdí mis llaves. Muy bien. How do you say I don't know in Spanish? Yo no sé. Yo no sé. How do you say it? Yo no sé. How to get. In this sentence, we'll translate it as cómo llegar. Cómo llegar. So remember that when we use the infinitive verbs in English, in Spanish, they will end with AR, ER, or IR. Cómo llegar. How do you say it? Cómo llegar. And how do you say there in Spanish? allí. Allí. How do you say it? Allí. So if we put it all together, I don't know how to get there in Spanish is yo no sé cómo llegar allí. Yo no sé cómo llegar allí. Your turn. Yo no sé cómo llegar allí. The next sentence starts with I would love. In Spanish is me encantaría. Me encantaría. How do you say I would love in Spanish? Me encantaría. To travel. Viajar. Viajar. And here we're using the verb that ends in A or in Spanish because it's the infinitive. How do you say to travel in Spanish? Viajar. Around the world. Alrededor del mundo. Alrededor del mundo. How do you say it? Alrededor del mundo. Let's put it all together. How do we say I would love to travel around the world in Spanish? Me gustaría viajar alrededor del mundo. Me gustaría viajar alrededor del mundo. Your turn. Me gustaría viajar alrededor del mundo. Excelente. How do you say I don't understand in Spanish? No entiendo. No entiendo. How do you say it? No entiendo. How to use. Cómo usar. Cómo usar. How do you say it? Cómo usar. And how do you say this in Spanish? Esto. Esto. How do you say it? Esto. Altogether, I don't understand how to use this. No entiendo cómo usar esto. No entiendo cómo usar esto. These can have different meanings in Spanish. In this case, we'll use esto. Your turn. No entiendo cómo usar esto. Very good. How do you say I have in Spanish? Yo tengo. Yo tengo. How do you say it? Yo tengo. To get ready. Que alistarme. Que alistarme. How do you say it? Que alistarme. For the party. Para la fiesta. Para la fiesta. How do you say for the party? Para la fiesta. Altogether, I have to get ready for the party in Spanish is yo tengo que alistarme para la fiesta. Yo tengo que alistarme para la fiesta. Your turn. Yo tengo que alistarme para la fiesta. How do you say there's no problem in Spanish? No hay problema. No hay problema. How do you say it? No hay problema. If you, si tú, how do you say if you in Spanish? Si tú. Come with us. Vienes con nosotros. Vienes con nosotros. How do you say it? Vienes con nosotros. So altogether, there's no problem if you come with us. No hay problema si tú vienes con nosotros. No hay problema si tú vienes con nosotros. How do you say it? No hay problema si tú vienes con nosotros. Very good. How do we say you were in Spanish? In this instance, we'll use tú estabas. Tú estabas. How is it? Tú estabas. In charge. A cargo. A cargo. How do you say it? A cargo. Of the drinks. De las bebidas. De las bebidas. How do you say of the drinks in Spanish? De las bebidas. So altogether, you were in charge of the drinks. Tú estabas a cargo de las bebidas. Tú estabas a cargo de las bebidas. How do we say it? Tú estabas a cargo de las bebidas. Now for a question. How do you say who is in Spanish? ¿Quién es? ¿Quién es? How do you say it? ¿Quién es? How do you say that person? Esa persona. Esa persona. Your turn. Esa persona. Talking to my dad. Hablando con mi papá. Hablando con mi papá. How do you say it? Hablando con mi papá. So all together, how do we say, who is that person talking to my dad? ¿Quién es esa persona hablando con mi papá? ¿Quién es esa persona hablando con mi papá? Your turn. ¿Quién es esa persona hablando con mi papá? How do you say I want to buy in Spanish? Quiero comprar. Quiero comprar. How do you say it? Quiero comprar a red shirt. Una camisa roja. Una camisa roja. How do you say a red shirt in Spanish? Una camisa roja. And black shoes. Y zapatos negros. Y zapatos negros. How do you say it in Spanish? Y zapatos negros. Now let's put it all together. How do you say in Spanish, I want to buy a red shirt and black shoes? Quiero comprar una camisa roja y zapatos negros. Quiero comprar una camisa roja y zapatos negros. It's important that you start learning structures. Here, for example, you learned quiero comprar. And you can change the ending of the sentence to whatever you need to buy. So how do you say this in Spanish? Quiero comprar una camisa roja y zapatos negros. Very good. Now, how do you say my sister has to? Mi hermana tiene que. Mi hermana tiene que. How do you say it? Mi hermana tiene que. Learn to cook. Aprender a cocinar. Aprender a cocinar. How do you say it? Aprender a cocinar. How do you say before she gets married? Antes de casarse. Antes de casarse. How do you say it? Antes de casarse. Now all together, my sister has to learn to cook before she gets married. Mi hermana tiene que aprender a cocinar antes de casarse. Mi hermana tiene que aprender a cocinar antes de casarse. How do you say it? Mi hermana tiene que aprender a cocinar antes de casarse. Excellent. How do you say there's a problem in Spanish? Hay un problema. Hay un problema. How do you say it? Hay un problema. With the car. Con el coche. Con el coche. How do you say with the car in Spanish? Con el coche. It won't start. No arranca. No arranca. How do you say it? No arranca. So all together in Spanish, there's a problem with the car, it won't start. Hay un problema con el coche. No arranca. Hay un problema con el coche. No arranca. The takeaway here is there's a problem. Hay un problema. And then you can finish the sentence. So how do you say it in Spanish? Hay un problema con el coche. No arranca. How do you say remember to buy milk in Spanish? Recuerda comprar leche. Recuerda comprar leche. How is it? Recuerda comprar leche. When you go. Cuando vayas. Cuando vayas. How do you say when you go? Cuando vayas. To the store. A la tienda. A la tienda. How do you say to the store? A la tienda. Putting it all together, remember to buy milk when you go to the store. Recuerda comprar leche cuando vayas a la tienda. Recuerda comprar leche cuando vayas a la tienda. How do you say it? Recuerda comprar leche cuando vayas a la tienda. The next one is a question. How do you say will you come? ¿Vendrás? ¿Vendrás? How do you say it? Vendrás. To the party? A la fiesta. A la fiesta. How do you say to the party? A la fiesta. Tomorrow night. Mañana por la noche. Mañana por la noche. How do you say tomorrow night? Mañana por la noche. So how do you say it all together? Will you come to the party tomorrow night? ¿Vendrás a la fiesta mañana por la noche? ¿Vendrás a la fiesta mañana por la noche? How do you say it? ¿Vendrás a la fiesta mañana por la noche? How do you say he didn't come? Él no vino. Él no vino. How do you say it? Él no vino. To work. A trabajar. A trabajar. How do you say to work? A trabajar. Because he's sick. ¿Por qué está enfermo? Porque está enfermo. How do you say it? Porque está enfermo. So altogether, he didn't come to work because he's sick. Él no vino a trabajar porque está enfermo. Él no vino a trabajar porque está enfermo. How do you say this sentence in Spanish? Él no vino a trabajar porque está enfermo. Now, how do we say if you want? Si quieres. Si quieres. How do you say it? Si quieres. I can lend you. Te puedo prestar. Te puedo prestar. How is it? Te puedo prestar. Some money. Algo de dinero. Algo de dinero. How do you say some money? Algo de dinero. So altogether, if you want, I can lend you some money. Si quieres, te puedo prestar algo de dinero. Si quieres, te puedo prestar algo de dinero. And here's another structure that you should learn. If you want. Si quieres. So how do you say this in Spanish? Si quieres, te puedo prestar algo de dinero. Muy bien. How do you say I need in Spanish? Yo necesito. Or you can drop the pronoun and just say necesito. Yo necesito. How do you say it? Yo necesito. To find. Encontrar. Encontrar. How do you say to find? Encontrar. My passport. Mi pasaporte. Mi pasaporte. How do you say my passport in Spanish? Mi pasaporte. Altogether, I need to find my passport. Yo necesito encontrar mi pasaporte. Yo necesito encontrar mi pasaporte. So how do you say I need to find my passport in Spanish? Yo necesito encontrar mi pasaporte. I'm ready to go. How would you say I'm ready to go? I am or I'm is estoy. Estoy. If you're feminine, you would say lista for ready, lista. If you're masculine, you would say listo, listo. And to go is para irme, para irme. Estoy lista para irme for feminine, or estoy listo para irme for masculine. And how do you ask, are you ready? It's very easy. If the person is feminine, you would ask, ¿estás lista? ¿Estás lista? Estás is, are you? Lista is ready. And for masculine, you would ask, ¿estás listo? ¿Estás listo? Muy bien. The next sentence is, I work from home. How do you say I work in Spanish? Trabajo. Trabajo. Remember that in Spanish, it's not necessary to use the pronouns. We're already conjugating the verb to the first person, so it's not necessary, but you can say, yo trabajo. How do you say from? Desde. Desde. And home is casa. Trabajo desde casa. Trabajo desde casa. And how would you ask somebody, where do you work? So where is donde. Donde. And the combination of do you work is just trabajas. It's the verb conjugated to the second person. Donde trabajas. Spanish doesn't have helping verbs like English does. And again, because we're using trabajas, we're already conjugating to the second person, so we don't need to say tú. ¿Dónde trabajas? How do you say I'm reading a book in Spanish? We already saw that I'm is estoy. Estoy. How do you say reading? Leyendo. Leyendo. A book is un libro. Estoy leyendo un libro. Estoy leyendo un libro. And how would you ask, what do you like to do in Spanish? Let's start with what. It means qué. Qué. And again, the combination of do you like translates into te gusta. Te gusta. To do is hacer. Hacer. ¿Qué te gusta hacer? ¿Qué te gusta hacer? Let's look at the next sentence. I need to go to the store. How do you say I need? Necesito. Or you can use the pronoun yo necesito. To go, ir. Ir. And to the store is a la tienda. A la tienda. Necesito ir a la tienda. Necesito ir a la tienda. So here you can change tienda for any other place. Necesito ir a la farmacia. Necesito ir al banco. I already have a video about the places around the city, so you can learn more about them. How would you ask in Spanish, do you need anything from the store? So here again, the do you need becomes just one word in Spanish. Necesitas. Necesitas. Anything is algo. Algo. And from the store, de la tienda. De la tienda. ¿Necesitas algo de la tienda? ¿Necesitas algo de la tienda? The next sentence is I want to eat something spicy. How do you say I want in Spanish? Quiero. Quiero. To eat is comer. Comer. And in this case, something also means algo. Algo. And spicy is picante. Quiero comer algo picante. Quiero comer algo picante. Very good. And if you want to ask somebody, do you want to eat something? Do you want means quieres. The same structure that we already saw before. So we're just going to conjugate the verb to want in Spanish to the second person. Quieres. To eat is comer. Comer. How do you say something? Algo. ¿Quieres comer algo? ¿Quieres comer algo? Muy bien. How do you say I like to play soccer in Spanish? I like is me gusta. Me gusta. To play, jugar. Jugar. And soccer is fútbol. Fútbol. Me gusta jugar fútbol. Me gusta jugar fútbol. Very good. And the last one is a question. How would you ask, do you like to play soccer? Here, since we're asking somebody else, is te gusta. Te gusta means do you like. And to play, jugar. And we already saw that soccer means fútbol. ¿Te gusta jugar fútbol? ¿Te gusta jugar fútbol? And of course, here you can replace soccer with any other sport or activity. And that's all I have for you today. If you like to learn Spanish with this format, go watch this video next. Muchas gracias.